Hello there everyone, my name is Crazy Caleb and welcome to Keypad Sequences. This is the way the module looks, and what this actually is this is a continuation of our Vanilla Swirls series. This is going to be a combination of wire sequences and keypad, as you can already tell. So this module has 4 stages, and this is going to be represented by the 4 black LEDs at the beginning right now. But this is also going to be similar to just wire sequence in general, because it is 4 stages on wire sequence. There also is going to be a number in the center here, just to let you know which stage you're currently on, in case you can't read LEDs for some reason. And also, what we have here is we have 4 buttons that are going to be representing a series of different keypad symbols. Some are from keypad, some are not from keypad though. For example, this one, this one, this one. But I do believe that they are from different, from other symbol modules. I believe maybe like Boolean keypad for some of these. I feel like I've seen some of these before maybe, but I'm not quite sure. But there's going to be a couple different ones that are going to actually appear here, but they're all going to be able to be displayed down in this table below, which we will get into in just a moment. So there's going to be 4 different stages, and this module is very tricky because of several different things. Well, first off, what we're going to do here is we're going to follow a series of different rules. Pretty straightforward. However, this module behaves a little bit differently compared to the original wire sequence. So what's going to happen here is within this module there are several panels with keypads on them. Okay. There will always be 4 keypads on each display, by the way. Switch to the next panel by using the down button and the previous panel by using the up button. Note that you're going to be using the up button a little bit more than you think you would. Do not switch to the next panel until all the necessary keys have been pressed. Press keys as directed by the list of rules below in the order they are satisfied. Symbol occurrences are cumulative over this module. This is one rule that I cannot stress enough. Rules and making sure that you press everything before going on to the next one are extremely important, because what can happen here is that there might be a rule that applies, for example, for rule number 3, but you might have missed something from rule number 2 that you needed to press. And therefore, regardless of whether 3 is right or wrong, because of the fact that you're not done with rule 2, it will give you a strike. So you have to be very, very careful about this. And also, keys that have already been correctly pressed do not need to be pressed again. Keys left up on previous panels may require pressing. So once you press a key, you're done with it. But we might have to go back to the original displays and actually take a look and see if we need to press anything in those positions there. So this is exactly why that you're going to be using this up arrow a little bit more than you think you would, because of the fact that we need to go back to previous stages potentially and press other buttons there. So that's going to make this thing a little bit interesting. The rules themselves are fairly simple to understand, and the way that I'm going to mark this stuff down is also fairly simple to understand. But it's important that you make sure that you keep every single symbol that you note down it marked in some way, shape, or form. So what I'm going to do is every time I happen to see a symbol, I'm going to mark it in blue. In this case, we have U2 right here. We have got our copyright. We have our little lightning bolt, I believe is what it's called. And in this case, these are going to be our 4 symbols on this display. All right, fair enough. So what happens if there happens to be a duplicate symbol? Well, the way that I'm going to mark this is I'm going to mark this by using my highlighter colors. And I'm simply going to move from digit 1, which is corresponding to blue here, and I'm going to move to digit 2, which is, in this case, for those of you who do not know how to change colors, simply what I'm doing here is I'm doing Alt and then the number that I'm selecting here. In this case, it can be from 0, it can be from 1 to, from 0 to 9, because you can have all the way to gray, black, white, and I'm going from 0 to 1 here on my keyboard. But in this case, just a simple way to mark the next occurrence of this case, in this case 2 occurrences, I'm going to simply mark this in red, for example. So in this case, 2 symbols have occurred at least some point in this module, 3 in this case, and 4 for the max in this case being yellow. It's very rare that you're going to see 4 different four of the exact same symbol, which requires you to have it on at least on 1 stage each. So very rare, but that could potentially happen. But that's the way I'm going to mark these symbols. So let's take a look and let's get into these rules here, because each stage is going to be a bit different from each other. So let's take a look and let's see what we need to do. Now note that when it says keys left up on previous panels may require pressing, note that we're not going to be going through stage 1 rules again after stage 1 is done. We're simply only going to be taking a look at stage 2. So there might be cases where we happen to not press something on stage 1, but for the stage 2 rules, it might require us to go back to panel 1 and press something there. That's what it means. So let's get right into this and let's start reading these rules, because these rules are fairly simple, but it's very important that you be very careful. So let's mark our symbols again here, because I unmarked all of them. And now let's get into the rules. Press the keys whose symbols are contained in the row or column in the table that contains the most symbols from the panel. So let's take a look. Now, what we have here is we have a row of 2 symbols. In this case, the rows include everything in this side of the quadrant and this side of the quadrant as well. It's just going to be the whole 6 things. Note that it will have a specific definition for quadrants. It will be referred to as quadrants. Let's take quadrant. Yes, it will be referred to as quadrant in the table when it specifically is referring to the top right, top left, and bottom right. But when it refers to rows and columns, this is essentially referring to the entire thing, as you can see here. Rows, columns, and whatnot. So all 6 symbols in a specific row. Hope that makes sense. So one thing that immediately sticks out to me is that we have 2 duplicate rows. In this case, we have a row and a column that have the exact same value. In this case, there are 2 symbols in each of them. So what happens with that? If 2 or more rows or columns have the most symbols, we're simply going to skip this rule. All right, fair enough. Next up, we're going to press the keys whose symbols are closest to the side of the table labeled with the most common port type, disregarding serial and parallel ports. Let's take a look. So we have RJ, RCA, and DVI, and that is going to be a serial. We don't care about serial. And in this case, this is going to be a time. If there are 2 or more most common port types, skip this rule. And the way that you can see which side each of them are is based off of these edges of the table over here. These will only be used for the first 2 rules, so it's not going to be too crazy. And it's not the hardest rule to understand. But there is not going to be, in this case, 2 or more most common port types. We're simply going to disregard this. Next, press the keys whose symbols are the only symbol contained in its quadrant of the table. In this case, this is actually true. What we have here is we have this little guy, this little lightning bolt, that's in the top left on its own. So we are therefore going to be pressing this guy without any problems. And just like that, that's good to go. This means that we've been able to successfully follow rules 1 and 2, as well as now being able to successfully determine what buttons we can press on rule 3. Now, we're not going to be pressing the other 2 symbols with this rule because of the fact that they're all in the same quadrant. So, from this point on, if no keys have been pressed, in this case that's not true, we have the top left pressed, we're going to be pressing the keys according to the indicators present on the bottom, and in this case, this would be referring to both lit or unlit, and only lit or only unlit, and no indicators. So in this case, fairly simple rule, you're going to only be pressing 1 button in that case. But overall, a fairly simple rule. We're done with stage 1 now, so let's head on over to the next panel. But bear in mind that we might be returning to panel 1 at some point. So, let's take a look. So our new symbols now are going to be the Tango Bravo, the Snake 3, the whatever this symbol is, I'm not sure how to describe it, and the Alpha Tango. Okay, we got a couple here. So now for stage 2, press the keys whose symbols are contained in the quadrant of the table that contains the most symbols. Okay, if two or more quadrants have the most symbols, skip this rule. And immediately one of the things that we can recognize here is that both quadrants, in this case the top right and the bottom left, have 3 symbols present in them. So we're therefore going to disregard this rule. 2 or more quadrants have the most symbols. So we're going to skip that rule. Press the pairs of keys that share the same symbol of which neither have been pressed. In this case, this is referring to symbols that have appeared in stages 1 and 2 that are both the exact same and have not been pressed. In this case, we're not going to have this. We haven't had any duplicates so far, so therefore we're simply going to skip this rule. Next up, press the keys whose positions match the quadrants of the table that contain their symbols. So what this rule is referring to is referring to the actual mod itself. Does it match the quadrant that it currently appears in based off of its position? So in this case, this works for Tango Bravo, in this case because it appears in the top left. But what I want to go back to is I want to go back to stage 1 first, because I want to see if there's anything that we missed here. The little swirl, the alpha swirl, whatever you want to call it, it actually does appear in the top right, both in the quadrant and the actual mod itself. So we can therefore press that button. Next up, the copyright does not appear in the bottom left. This little upside down mic does not appear in the bottom right. It appears in the top right quadrant. So therefore, this little bit is done. This is exactly what I mean by we're going to be going back and pressing buttons, and it's completely fine with it. So now, let's press Tango Bravo because we determined that that was correct. I just wanted to make sure that we don't miss anything, and also because I'm a little bit paranoid because I'm not quite sure about this, but I think it might want to press it in order based off of the symbols. I'm not sure if it's any sort of picky with how you do the panels, whether it be going back to panel 1 and then doing it panel 1, 2, 3, 4, or whether you can do 2 and then 1 and whatnot. But I think it specifically is going to be just referring to following the rules in the exact order. I hope that makes sense. But in this case, we also have one more symbol that we need to press. In this case, the bottom left. This one corresponds to the bottom left quadrant, and it is bottom left in the mod. So therefore, we can press that one. And Alpha Tango is in the bottom left, not the bottom right, so therefore this does not match. The Snake 3 is in the bottom left, not the top right, so therefore that does not match. Okay, that rule is done. Next up, press the keys whose symbols lie on an edge in the table corresponding to a present port type. Note that we're not looking for the most port type, the label the most common port type. We're going to be taking a look at just if it's present or not, and if it's on the edge of the table. So let's take a look. So we said that we had RCA, stereo RCA, DVID, and an RJ45. In this case, these three edges. So now what we can do is we can now press the Snake 3 because it's on the left side it's on an edge with the DVID. That's good to go. We can press the Charlie from the previous stage. In this case, the stereo RCA. It matches with that. So as you can see, it's not picky with how the panel works. I just pressed the one from the second stage, and I just pressed the one from the first stage with no problem whatsoever. It just wants to make sure that you follow the rules in the correct order. It's very picky about that. And that looks like that's it for edges. We've already pressed the lightning bolt, so therefore this does not apply. We don't really care about this one. Even though it does apply to the DVI rule, it's already been pressed, and we're simply just going to leave it alone. Okay, and that rule is done. And if no keys on the panels have been pressed, in this case that's not true, press the keys on the diametrically opposite sides of the keypad from the keys that were pressed on panel 1. So, not too bad. And now we can simply move on. In this case, we've pressed 3 keys from panel 2, so therefore we're good to go. All right, heading on to our next rules here. We've got the gamepad, we've got the backwards echo face, we've got the pitchfork, and where's the pitchfork? There it is. And we got the 6. Love it. So far, no duplicates, which is quite good. And I'm going to get rid of the markings of these ports just for the sake of just visibility. So now, press the keys whose symbols are not orthogonally adjacent to any other symbol in the table present. So this means what we're trying to look for is we're trying to look for loners in a way, like modules that are by themselves, and they're not adjacent to anything. And orthogonally obviously refers to up, right, down, and left. So that's what we're going to be looking for here. And note that this table doesn't move around, as far as I'm aware. But in this case, none of these symbols matches this case. Everything is adjacent to at least one thing. The pitchfork is adjacent to the Alpha Tango. The Echo is adjacent to the Tango Bravo. The Charlie is adjacent to all of these guys. These guys are all adjacent. The 6 is adjacent to the Snake 3. And this is what it means by we're going to be using the symbol occurrences are cumulative over the module. And this means that we're going to be using everything that appears over the mod. So this rule does not apply. It just doesn't work. Press the pairs of keys whose symbols are diametrically opposed in the table of which neither have been pressed. Now, it's very important that we check for pairs who are diametrically opposed, but they also need to make sure that neither of them have been pressed. Neither occurrence has been pressed. So let's take a look and let's see if any of them have been pressed from previous stages of 1 and 2. So let's see what we can do here. So Alpha Tango potentially could do something here. And the way that I like to do diametrically opposite stuff is I like to do one opposite and then do the other one. I'll explain what I mean by this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up. We're going to do the vertically opposed. So in this case, 1, 2, 1. So in this case, or just 1, then other half, then 1, up to like this upside down 2. Then we're going to do the horizontally opposed. In this case, that's going to take us to the Alpha Wisp. Now, has Alpha Wisp been pressed? It has indeed. So therefore, this dimension opposite is not going to apply. Now another one here. This one is a fairly simple one to do. This upside down mic has not been pressed. The diametric opposite, this one's fairly easy to tell. It's going to be this little weird symbol down here. But this one, I believe, has been pressed. It has indeed. So therefore, this does not apply. And I think that's going to be it for that stuff. I don't really see anything that's sticking out to me for diametrically opposite. So because that would go top right, it would go bottom right, then top right. It's the most top right. Yeah, I think that's gonna be it. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I think that's gonna be it for diametrically opposite. Nothing is screaming out at me that works. Simply because there's just so much stuff in the bottom left, and almost all of the stuff has been pressed in the top right, and the stuff that has not been pressed in the top right doesn't work. So this rule does not apply. Press the pairs of keys that share the same symbol of which neither have been pressed. This is a very similar rule to the one that we just had from beforehand. We have not had any duplicates yet, so therefore this does not apply. Press the keys whose symbols are contained in the row or column of the table that contain the fewest non-zero amount of symbols counting duplicates. Okay. This rule is a very important one to make sure that you do right. And immediately what I'm seeing here is this is going to be easily applied to 2 rows in this case. Charlie and the 6. As you can see, these only contain 1 present symbol in them. And in this case, that's going to be the fewest amount of fewest non-zero symbols that are contained here. So this is going to be the 2 that apply. Now what happens with duplicates? If 2 or more rows or columns have the fewest amount of symbols, press every key with those symbols. So let's just make sure that there aren't any other cases of 1. There is actually. This mic in the column here is by itself. So therefore, we can actually go back and actually press this one because this is only going to be 1 case. There we go. We've pressed the copyright symbol. Have we pressed the 6 yet? No, we haven't because it's present on this stage. There we go. Now let's make sure that we didn't miss anything else because it's very easy to do this. No, that's got 3, that's got 3, that's got 2, that's got 3, that's got 1. We just did that. That's got 1, that's got 3, that's got 2, that's got 1. Ooh, here we go. The ass here has only 1 in its row. There we go. Glad I didn't miss that. We did this and we already did that. So therefore, that rule is taken care of. Next up, press the keys whose symbols form 2 by 2 squares in the table. Ooh, okay. So now this rule requires you to have essentially a 2 by 2 square. It forms a 2 by 2 square. So what's going to happen here is immediately I can already tell there's none that actually do form it. But for example, if we had like this little puzzle piece from in a previous stage from beforehand, this would form a 2 by 2 square. Now, bear in mind that we're going to be trying to find all occurrences of 2 by 2 squares in the table here. So in this case, if some of them happen to like loop over, for example, if there was like a big group of 6, I think you would press all of those because you have this 2 by 2 square, and then you have this 2 by 2 square. I think that's the way that I'm understanding this. But in this case, that rule does not apply. And if no keys on the panel previously have been pressed, in this case, that is not true. We've already had 2 of them pressed so far. So therefore, I believe that we can simply move on. And we can. Good. Okay. So we have the this backwards 3. We have alpha echo. We've got a papa. And we've got this little guy here. Now, if all keys on the module have unique symbols, press every key on panel 4. Ooh, lovely. We can indeed do that. We did not have any duplicates whatsoever. This is one that I actually haven't had apply at all, but good. This actually works. But we're not done yet. We're not out of the woods yet. Because now what we need to do is we need to go through every other rule to make sure that we don't have to press anything from previous stages. We still have a couple unpressed buttons, and we need to make sure that these do not apply to any other rules. We're done with panel 1, by the way. I should mention that. So all we simply want to do is start taking a look at 2 and 3. That's all we simply need to do. If every panel has a duplicate symbol, in this case, that is not true. So that would just simply be the case of just not true. But make sure that we pay attention to these rules here, because now what's going to happen here is it wants you to press the top right key on every panel. Make sure that you pay attention to these because these want you to do bottom left on every panel, top left on every panel, bottom right on every panel, and of course pressing the same keys that share a symbol have not been pressed. That's going to be important here. So just make sure that you read it, especially for stage 4. It wants you to press the top right for every panel that you haven't pressed so far. So let's take a look. Let's continue. So if every panel has a duplicate symbol, not true. If any quadrant contains 2 or fewer symbols, not true. We've had at least 3 in the top left and bottom right, and top right has top left, bottom right. Top right has 4, bottom left has had 6. Now, if all 6 symbols of any row or column in the table do not appear on the module, press the top left key on the panel. In this case, we've had at least 1 in every single row or column here. This does not apply. So no, this is not true. If any row or column contains 6 or more symbols present on the module, including duplicates, press the bottom right key on every panel. Now, the way that this rule works is a bit interesting. Obviously, you can have all 6 symbols simply appear without any problems whatsoever. But what can also happen is, say for example, there was a duplicate of the pitchfork, for example. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the 2 pitchforks, and 6. This rule would therefore count because of the fact that there is 6 total symbols in here, even though this little X symbol, this little X guy, is not present. That's what this rule is referring to, because it's including duplicates in this. But in this case, that's not true, so therefore this rule does not apply here. We've not had a full column or row that has happened. And finally, press the pairs of keys that share a symbol of which neither have been pressed. In this case, we have not had any of those. We haven't had any duplicates. So therefore, I believe at this point we're done, because now it's going to be asking if no keys on panel 4 have been pressed. We simply don't care about that. Okay, now let's go down on panel 4. And just like that is a solved module. Sorry about taking so long for this. I wanted to make sure I go through every little rule, like little nitpicky rule, and make sure that I explain them correctly, because these rules are very easy to happen to miss, and you just got to be very, very careful with this mod. This mod is very tricky, but overall, it's not too hard to do. Just make sure that you don't forget previous presses from other panels, because that's going to be very important. So let's take a look at one more example. I'm going to go through it a little bit faster, and by a little bit I mean a lot faster. But that's all we're essentially doing with this mod. It's just going through rules, make sure you do them in the exact order. As long as you press them in the exact order that the rules apply, you should be fine. Let's continue. Okay, let's get this thing going. Alrighty, here, and here. Okay, interesting. So, press the keys whose symbols are contained in the row or column of the table that contain the most symbols. In this case, we have two cases. We have a row and a column with 2 of them in it, so therefore it's a tie. We do not care. There's actually several ties too, here and here, and over here as well. So in this case, we're going to skip this rule. Press the keys whose symbols are closest to the side of the table with the most common port type. Let's take a look. Well, there's all 4 of them. So therefore, all 4 of the ports that we would pay attention to do appear. So there is therefore 2 or more common of the most port type. So let's skip that. Next up, press the keys whose symbols are the only symbols contained in its quadrant of the table. This applies to 2 of them, actually. We've got the mic in the top right, and we've got this little X in the bottom right, which actually happen to share the exact same coordinates, same quadrants as they do in positions of the module. Now, for these 2 symbols, we can't press this on this stage, but let's take a look at the next one here. If no keys have been pressed, nope, we don't care about this. Let's move on. Next up, press the keys whose symbols are contained in the quadrant in the table that contain the most symbols. In this case, let's highlight everything. So we've got you, we've got you, we've got you, and we've got you. Oh, you appear now. We actually have a duplicate. Okay, this is going to be a bit interesting. So now, let's take a look. So press the keys whose symbols are contained in the quadrant of the table that contain the most symbols. In this case, this is a very clear winner of the bottom left. So we're now going to be pressing the backwards Charlie. We're going to press the snake 3. We're going to press the stuff from the previous stage, which includes this guy right here, and this guy as well. So therefore, we have actually cleared stage 1. Okay. Now let's take a look at these other 2 guys and see if we can get anything here. Press the pairs of keys that share the same symbol, of which neither have been pressed. In this case, we've had a duplicate. However, we've had a case where the X was pressed from the previous stage, so therefore this rule does not apply. Let's continue. Press the keys whose positions match the quadrants of the table that contain their symbol. In this case, that applies to the X itself right here, because it appears in the bottom right in the manual, and it appears in the bottom right in the module. Okay. It does not work for the echo, because top right is not top left. It does not match. Next up, press the keys whose symbols lie on the edge of the table with a corresponding port type present. The echo is the only one that we have not pressed, and it does not appear on the edge, so we therefore do not care. And finally, if no keys in the panel have been pressed, in the case that is not true, we can simply continue. Okay, press the keys whose symbols are not orthogonally adjacent to any other symbol. Let's first mark our symbols here. So we've got the copyright, we have the alpha tango, we've got U, and we have the snake 3. Snake 3 is another duplicate, okay? Now, we actually can go back. The echo does not have any duplicates, any symbols that orthogonally appear adjacent to it. So therefore, we can safely press this guy. And now, we only have to focus on the symbol 3. We already have pressed symbols 2, and we've already pressed panels 1 and 2 completely. So therefore, we're good to go. We can continue going. Charlie, the copyright symbol, does not have any symbols that appear adjacent to it either. In this case, the little upside down mic, would be diagonally adjacent to it, not orthogonally. So we can therefore press this guy too. Good. Now, as for the rest of these guys, these do not apply. Simple as that. But that's the first rule taken care of here. Next up, press the pair of symbols whose symbols are diametrically opposed in which neither have been pressed. Now, we need to focus on only these guys here. So do we have anything that appears diametrically opposite that has not been pressed? So let's take a look. So we've got this little, like all these upside down uniforms, or like little hills, I guess you would ever call it, that sort of form a ring. Let's do vertically opposite, or yeah, let's do horizontally, and then vertically it would correspond to Tango Bravo. Therefore, this does not apply. The snake 3. Let's go 1, 2. It's going to go up to the question mark, then going to go to the little wizard staff, like the broken 3. So therefore, this does not apply. And we're not going to get any other angles with this. So we've got up to 2 and over to the wisp. Alpha Tango is not, and the wisp are not here. So therefore, this does not apply. Press the pairs of keys that are the same symbol of which either have been pressed. These are the only three symbols that have not been pressed. These that we haven't had any duplicates that aren't pressed. So therefore, this does not apply. Press the keys whose symbols are contained in the row or column that contain the fewest non-zero amount of symbols. Okay, let's take a look. So already 1 is our threshold. 1 is our threshold that we need to have happen. And in this case, this happens to the backwards Charlie as well. As for columns, does it include duplicates? It does count duplicates. So in this case, this is a 2, not a 1. This is a 1 though. So in this case, we can now press the Alpha Tango. Good to go. Now I think that that's it, because this is this row has 2, this column has 4, and snake 3 has 2, so therefore this does not apply, and this is 5. So this rule does not apply. And then finally, press the keys whose symbols form 2x2 squares in the table. None are formed so far yet, so therefore this does not apply. And there have been keys pressed on panel 3, so therefore we can simply just disregard this rule.
It's hugely frustrating, isn't it?
It appears we have missed something. I must have overlooked something here. Let me go back and make sure I didn't miss anything from the previous 2 stages. I pressed all of them. I'm going to continue on, and that just shows you an example of how easy it is to miss something. But in this case, that gave me a strike because I missed something from one of the previous rules. So we know for a fact that we pressed this one when the keys whose symbols are contained in the row or column that contain the fewest amount of symbols. Now, we know for a fact that this rule happened, and this was satisfied with the Alpha Tango. So, let's figure this out. There must be something wrong with what I did. I'm trying to figure out what the heck could be wrong with it. Unless for some reason it might be a bug. Because this is very, very likely to have happened, because this is this recently just got released. And this might be an issue with this one. It has to be. It has to be the top. It has to be this one, because it might be counting this as 1. It is that, yeah. So that's likely a bug. I will probably have to report that. Apologies for that. But let's continue on with our tutorial here. Normally, this would not count duplicates. Because as you can see, we had snake 3 from beforehand. In this case, on panel 2, and on panel 3 as well. It should have counted duplicates. And this, for some reason, did not. I'm not quite sure why. Don't question it. Unless there's like some sort of 2x2 that I'm just not seeing here. That's my bad. So, let's continue on. Okay, now on to stage 4. We get another snake 3. Jesus. Okay, so we get 3 snake 3s. We get a question mark. We get an upside down question mark. We get the backwards Charlie again. Jesus, we're getting all the duplicates now. And we get another echo. Wow. Okay. If all keys have unique symbols, absolutely not. If every panel has a duplicate symbol, no, actually it does not. Every panel, it's referring to every panel has a duplicate symbol. In this case, this does not apply. Hold on, maybe it does. Let's go back. So, do we have any duplicates from this one? We do, actually. We do have the X-ray. We have the X-ray from here too. We have the backwards echo from here as well. We've got the snake 3s. So yes, actually this does happen to apply. Every panel has a duplicate symbol. So now what we're going to do is we're going to press the top right key on every panel. Okay. We need to press the top right here. And in this case, we already know that we've already done 1 and 2 so far. That's all we simply need to do. Now, if any quadrant contains 2 or fewer symbols present, yes, this is indeed true. The copyright and the upside down mic, in this case, are 1 quadrant with 2 or fewer. So now what we're going to do is we're going to press the bottom left key on every single panel. So bottom left here, and bottom left here. Now we're down to panel 1, 2, 3. All we simply have is these last 2 symbols left. Let's take a look. If all 6 symbols of any row or column do not appear on the module, in this case, this far right column has this case supply. So now what we're going to do is we're going to press the top left key on every panel. Okay. Fairly simple. Next up, if any row or column contains 6 or more symbols present on the model, including duplicates, which in this case is going to be this row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yes. Now what we're going to do is we're going to press the bottom right key on every panel, press the bottom left, bottom right one. We know that we pressed every single button on this key here, and now, just like that, is a solved module. Apologies for running into that bug. I'm not sure what happened. I will report this because this obviously, it's either some kind of error that has happened with this one, or I'm not quite sure. If you guys happen to know what happened in the comments, if it was a bug, please let me know. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Remember to stay crazy, stay cool, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.